Welcome to Inside the Outside. I'm Gary Kirk.
And I'm Christy Kirk.
This week we're going to be talking to everybody's favorite bling dealer, Dutch.
I thought you were talking about Tiffany's.
No, it's Dutch from DutchwareGear.com.
I know, the maker of all wonderful things hammock related and all kinds of little gadgets and doodads that do amazing things with almost no weight to them. We don't have any really long hikes planned this summer, a few shorter ones, but we have lots of runs. And recently we completed your first ever obstacle race, Gary, the Rugged Maniac. We did it in Rockingham, North Carolina. My third obstacle race, your first. What were your thoughts?
Well, it wasn't as muddy as I was expecting. There was some mud there, but I was kind of shocked to find out how little mud there was. And the water obstacles, I will say I'm thankful that they actually treated the water. I could get this essence of bleach in the water. So it was clean mud.
Yeah.
Sanitary mud.
Having done Rugged Maniacs in the past and having done the Spartan, this one was the lamest I've ever done.
I know you said that, and I had no expectations. So, to me, it was fine, but
it wasn't muddy enough. You said it yourself. It wasn't muddy enough. We literally ran for 2 miles before we hit a real mud obstacle.
Yeah, and during that space, it was all dust. The dust was the worst part of the whole thing.
Yeah, and it was just, maybe it was the course. They were using a racetrack, and maybe that was the problem, but it just wasn't muddy enough. Afterwards, I wasn't muddy. And if I'm not muddy in an obstacle race, why am I bothering? So I'm glad you had a great experience. There are better ones. And the Rugged Maniac that's actually in the fall here in North Carolina is a really good muddy one. And so we'll maybe give that one a try. I have to admit, I'm burnt out on obstacle races. I don't want to go over another wall. It's just not that much fun after I've done it 3 times.
And I guess since it was my first one, it was a little more fun for me. My favorite part was the one where we had to jump up and grab a rope, and it kind of zip lined us over into this water that there was no way you weren't going to get wet because the zip line stopped far short of the other bank. So yeah, you got wet up to, about your armpits. So
yeah, that was the best obstacle by far. And the shoe grab, I've been in that one before where it's really fun and it's muddy and it's up to your waist. But anyway, I'm a little disappointed. Here's what I want. People who organize Spartans, Rugged Maniacs, whatever. I want a fun obstacle race that has lots of mud, lots of getting dirty, lots of getting wet, and no stupid walls to climb, because they're not a physical challenge and they're just annoying.
And the one thing that I would have liked to have seen is, as you mentioned, that first 2 miles, there was maybe 2 obstacles, 3 obstacles, something like that. I want to have steady obstacles paced through, because it's an obstacle course race. I'm not there to actually run a 5K. The distance may cover 5K, but I want obstacles.
And truthfully, this is the first one where we've had to run 2 miles before we got to anything significant. I mean, we had 2 lousy walls before we actually got to something muddy. So yeah, I mean, it was nice to be there with friends. We had a big group of people that we were with. We had a great meal afterwards. The race I found a little lame, and I'm completely disappointed in Rugged Maniac. However, the shirts are better this year. So
yeah, the shirt was nice. The medal was nice. I'm really looking forward to the race that we've got coming up this weekend in Raleigh, North Carolina. It's the Viking Trail Run. It's the first trail run I've ever done. Is it your first trail run?
It's my first trail race.
Yeah. Yeah, I've ran on trails, but I've never done it as an organized race. I like I'm not going to lie, I like the shirt and the medal that's coming on this one.
Well, let's be honest. We signed up because it's called the Viking Dash, and the medal is like this big Viking.
It's Thor's hammer.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah.
That's funny. I was just like, oh, it's like a Viking axe, and the shirt's cool. And again, we have a group of friends who are running it with us, and that always makes it fun. And again, we're going to go eat after, which makes it even more fun. So
we do this for the fashion and the camaraderie and the after meals.
Yeah. You want a good shirt. You want a good medal.
All right. So I know people are done listening to us ramble. Let's get on to this interview.
Now, we recorded this interview several months ago. That's before the lawsuit with Ripstop by the Roll was filed. We don't ask him about it, of course, because we didn't know about it. We're not going to talk about it. We're letting the courts decide. We hope you'll listen to the interview with an open mind and get some great tips.
Yeah, and be sure to stick around to the end because I'm going to give you my personal review of the Dutchware Chameleon. I used it this past weekend for a Memorial Day camping trip with the family. Got lots of good information for you.
And you have a tarp you want to talk about.
I do. I tried out the DD Hammocks 4x4 tarp. I'll tell you a little bit more about that along with my review of the Dutch Chameleon. Well, Dutch, we really appreciate you joining us on the show today. It's a real pleasure. I've been a fan of you and your products ever since I got into hammock camping. You're a legend in the industry. So I'm curious, have you always been an outdoor person or if not, when did you get into this whole outdoor world?
Well, I grew up with a love for the outdoors. Mostly it was hunting. I think that mainly because my family was kind of into that. And we do kind of live out in the country, or at least it used to be country before it all became overdeveloped. And, but it was hunting that I decided that I was going to hike the Appalachian Trail. And I really wasn't that much of a hiker, but that's what really got the ball rolling.
So when it comes to, getting outside, do you like to do long hikes, short hikes, car camping, all the above? What is it that, really excites you to be able to get out in the woods?
Well, my availability to get on long hikes has been limited ever since starting the business, which is kind of ironic. But I do still get out for weekends and things of that. And lately, I've been feeling more passionate about doing bike backpacking and camping, using my bike, which I find to be also good exercise.
Yeah, I actually have an annual bike packing trip that we do in West Virginia, which is where I'm originally from. And we're over in the Radio Quiet Zone. We go into the Cranberry Glades area along the Cranberry River. Absolutely love that. The bicycle, like you said, it's a good exercise. But also once you get to base camp, you can take off on the bike and go fishing or, whatever it is that you're looking to do.
Yeah, exactly. Also, I love gear, and bike packing really has a lot of cool gear.
Yeah, it's sort of like that happy spot between backpacking and car camping.
Yeah, exactly.
So I wonder, your first big trip was the Appalachian Trail. I'm guessing you didn't have a hammock on that.
Actually, I was probably one of the first people to hike the Appalachian Trail in a hammock. And
oh, that's awesome.
My first night in a hammock was in a Hennessy, and it was on Springer Mountain.
Oh, wow.
That's a bold move. A lot of people, we always tell people you need to experiment before you get out on the trail because you don't want to be learning there. But apparently it worked out well for you. Yeah,
being dropped off in Georgia with a hammock, and they didn't have underquilts at the time. So I had a Z-Rest that I used for insulation and a sleeping bag. And that's being committed.
Definitely. So you said your Hennessy was your first hammock. I know you make a lot of your own hammocks. Do you still have that original Hennessy sort of as a memento, I guess?
I do still have it. And at the time, the Hennessy hammock was the best backpacking hammock out there. Actually, there was only about 2 that were available. There was that or Clark, and Clark's tend to be pretty heavy.
And what year was this that you tackled the Appalachian Trail with a hammock?
That was 2003.
Wow. And so how did it progress from going on your first long distance hike with a hammock to becoming one of the most well-known and respected hammock manufacturers?
Well, after I got done with the trail, I got into wanting to make my own gear. And the hammock industry was completely void of innovation. So I began making my own gear, and it led me to a couple websites. The ironic part of that is I was kind of too cheap to go buy some new gear. So I started producing my own, and now I wind up owning an incredible amount. I started getting hooked up with different forums, and it wound up taking me to hammock forums, mostly because I wanted to make a quilt. And I really enjoyed the give and take of the early years of hammock forums. It was a bunch of bearded guys with sewing machines, just trying to figure this stuff out on their own.
Yeah, I went down a similar path. Whenever I got started, wanted to make my own gear, and ended up on the hammock forums. And you're right, some of those early videos, video quality wasn't great, but the passion was there, and the instruction and helpfulness was definitely there.
Yeah, and actually, I fought against being a vendor for as long as I could, because people becoming vendors actually hurt that DIY community. Because once people started coming out with making companies and making products, nobody wanted to share their ideas anymore. And unfortunately, that made it go to the wayside.
Yeah, and I remember in the beginning, your site was mostly different resources for people that wanted to do DIY. In the beginning, that's where I went to, get my straps or my buckles and, sewing materials and things like that. What prompted you to finally break over and start making your own hammocks?
Well, one of the things that I wanted to do in getting to DIY was all the fabrics. And I was making some darn good hammock fabrics. So I was able to produce a hammock fairly cheap. When I did that, I was able to sell what was really my forte was suspensions. I was doing a lot of titanium doodads and stuff. So if I sold a hammock, people always got the suspension that came with it.
Yeah, you mentioned the doodads. I am ashamed to say how many doodads of yours I have, although I know I'm not alone. Everybody likes to talk about their various Dutch bling. The first titanium items that I ever had came from your site. I love the fleas and the worms and things like that. Super, super handy, super functional, really good products.
Thank you. They are something that we're very proud of. And we like taking that nature thing by calling everything bugs and bringing it into our gear.
And I'm wondering what you might have on the horizon. What ideas are you still working to innovate?
Yes, we actually release at least one product every week, and probably more.
Wow.
Now, many of them are very small, and maybe it's just some special cord lock that we found. But we just recently came out with what we call the pup tent, which is a small tent that hangs off of your hammock suspension so that your dog can have an enclosed area at night. Because that's one of the challenges we have with the hammock sometimes, is having a place for your dog. We have been continually working in Dyneema composite fabrics, and we are going to be coming out with a new line of tarps there. And we also have a very special hammock that is on the horizon that I can't give any more information than that on, but we hope to release it within the next 6 months. And it's something that we've been working on for over a year. So you can expect it to be pretty well developed when it does get released.
Wow. Now, how many people are on your team? You're making fabrics, you're doing these innovations in design, not to mention all of the, suspension pieces. How many people are working with you?
There is currently 23 people that work here.
Wow. And it started just with you?
Yes, it started in my basement, and at first my business model was that I was never going to hire anybody because I didn't want to be an employer, and I was going to keep it small. And if I needed somebody, I would just subcontract out the work. But you can only do that for so long. It has to grow. And still, we had a 20% increase in sales just this last year.
Oh, wow.
So we're still growing.
Well, I think by keeping it in-house, you're able to maintain that high level of quality that people expect out of your product. Because, while you might be really cranking out some product these days, it's still very much, a cottage vendor approach. The one thing that I liked is if you ever have a question or a problem or, whatever it might be, you can pick up the phone and call, and you're going to be talking to either you or one of the people there that you personally oversee.
That is correct. And we have a lot of outdoor enthusiasts that work here. And particularly someone in our customer service, Carolyn, she uses this gear very often and is very good, gives the same advice as what I would when it comes to making purchases or how to set up the gear. And that goes, especially for my management staff, that they know and use this gear. And also it's taken a lot off of my plate. I'm no longer the sole person doing the designing. That pup tent was actually brought up by someone in my staff and developed by the seamstresses.
I think it's a great product. It's definitely something that fills a niche. When you get out on the trail, so many people have a dog with them. It's a lot of people are solo hikers, but they take their dog along with them. That's their trail partner. So that's a great niche there.
Yeah, I could have used that in the past, so I'll be looking forward to checking that out. I'm wondering, since you've been in the hammock world for so long and are certainly a pioneer in this community, what are some of the mistakes or maybe some advice you could give to someone curious about going hammock camping for the first time?
Well, it's always good to test it out in your backyard. I like to go over prepared for weather because I don't want to be cold. And I think one of the biggest things is when you're just getting into this, if you were to go out and get the best of everything, which you don't know exactly what that need is just yet, it would be very expensive. But you can get a netless hammock for something pretty inexpensive, and you can use some of your gear that you already have, the pad and a sleeping bag. You can get a tarp for easily $100. You can get a hex tarp. So you can get in this, go out camping, use it 1 or 2 times, and then start to be picking out your gear. And also make sure that you really like it, because a lot of people get into this and they wind up not using it and they wind up having to sell everything.
Yeah, I know when you first start, especially now that there are so many options out there, it can seem overwhelming, but it really doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to be complicated. A lot of people start sort of on that more complicated end, and I think it scares them away at sometimes, but really at the heart of it, it's just a hammock with a tarp, and, throw your pad and your blanket in there and you're good to go.
I am guilty of making it overwhelming because I'm always driving to releasing products.
Yep.
But still, my philosophy in making the gear, and when I go hiking, and when I tell people just keep it simple as possible, it's going to probably grow more than what you really want it to. But just try to keep it as simple as possible.
Well, I think that's great advice for anyone in the hammock camping world. But we talked about newbies because I think it can be really overwhelming to start in this world. But what about the person who's been hammock camping for years? What's maybe a tip or an idea that might help them that they're not aware of?
Well, site location is very important when it comes to avoiding weather. Really kind of knowing the lay of the land and what's going to happen if the wind changes or how the wind's going to be blowing that night. There's things that you can do that can make it so that you need less insulation and such. Also, I like to color code a lot of my gear. So there is a red suspension where I want the head of my hammock, and I follow that through everything. I'm not really so worried about the color of my gear, but I will use color because when you are setting up at dusk, it is really hard to see which end of your quilt is the slightly wider end than the foot end. So I like to use that, and it kind of prepares everything for you.
Oh, that's a great tip.
Yeah, you are actually the first person to bring that up. And when I was doing the DIY stuff for Christy and I actually did color coordinate that. I don't know if you noticed it. It wasn't just a stylistic choice. Yeah. So, I'm curious, do you have any big trips or events planned for this year?
Well, this business does take me a lot of places. As a matter of fact, I'm about to go on this trip where I'm going to, on Sunday, I'm going to New York City. On Monday, I'm flying out of Newark to the SHOT Show, which is going to be out in Las Vegas. From there, I'm going to go to HangCon for the next weekend, and that's around Orlando, and it's about 300 people camp out. From there, after we go home for one day, we're going to be going back out to the Outdoor Retailer Show. which is out in Denver, Colorado. That's all within less than 2 weeks.
Wow, you are a busy man.
Now, for trips, though, I did 2 long bicycle backpacking trips, and basically I've ridden my bike from Kansas City to Ohio this year.
Oh my gosh!
And that is, I'm just getting my feet wet in it, but it's something that I'm really enjoying, and I think it will. I would like it to be a bigger part of what I do. I'm able to get and hoping to get even more out of the office this year. And I've been going with Adam from Hammock Gear, which we have been very close friends since before we either of us owned companies. And we met hiking actually in Wisconsin, and we've been friends ever since. So we've been riding together, and he's actually talking about doing a transcontinental bike ride this next year, and that's always been my dream. So I'm probably going to tag along a little bit for that.
Oh, that's terrific. Now, can we anticipate some bike camping gear making its way into your product lineup?
Absolutely. Actually, that is something that I mean, we're so close to having all the right materials for all that, and all the hardware and all the buckles, and it really fits us really well. So, and also that market, I think it could use a Dutch, and we got the printers to be able to print up these things. We could do custom frame packs, and actually I'm doing right now a custom frame pack for the developer of the Hang Time hook, and we are making one for him.
I'm really anxious to see that. I think that is a market that is primed. Like you said, they need a Dutch. That is an untapped area. I love to see that.
Yeah, it also justifies me riding off my bike.
There you go. Yeah, you got to get your silver linings where you can.
Absolutely.
Yep.
We've talked a little bit about products that you might have in the pipeline, but what do you see for the future of hammock camping as a whole?
Well, I would say that there was this big trend over the last 5 years of a lot of products going overseas. That's going to continue. I would say that has forced out of the market some of the smaller cottage vendors, and there's been less new cottage vendors that have entered. And I think that's unfortunate, because I believe that's where a lot of the innovation comes. I believe you will get less expensive gear, but I'm afraid that some of the innovation, either a lot of it has already been done already, or people perceive it as being done already, or it's just going to be more copies of the same. Beyond that, there is always new fabrics that are coming out, making things lighter and making things more simplistic. There's some new designs that have been coming out. I would say War Bonnet has come up with some great designs, and people are always able to incorporate the titanium, the Cuban fiber, the I should call that Dyneema composite fabric, because they changed the name of it, and also like things like the Xenon, the polyester sill, have made improvements in the gear that's already out there.
Yeah, I would love to see the Dyneema prices come down, which I think that'll happen with the prevalence of it getting used out in the industry. I would love to make my own gear with some Dyneema, but it was just a little too pricey for me when I was making our first round of gear.
Unfortunately, that trend has been going up. They were they were bought out by somebody, and they are. It's some of the perfect gear. It's perfect for making tarp. It's fantastic if you ever get a Z-Pack backpack. It's fantastic gear for that. There's some other new companies that are coming out with, like Light AF has been working in the Dyneema composite fabric and making some great gear out of that. But unfortunately, it is pricey. Very good for the DIYer though, because it often uses tape instead of sewing. So you don't have to have all the sewing skills in the world, and you can produce things like a stuffed sack pretty easily.
That's very cool. Well, Dutch, it's been a pleasure talking to you, and you've shared such great information. I'm wondering, as we wrap up, if you have any parting words you'd like to share with our listeners.
Oh, yeah, try to get out there and enjoy yourself. Get out in the wilderness. It's I think this world could use a lot more of getting away from your phone, getting away from the 24-hour news cycle, or caught up in whatever drama's going on, and getting out and getting inside your own head and seeing what's not only outside but inside your own head.
I think that is a perfect note to end on. I couldn't agree more with that sentiment. Well, again, Dutch, it's been awesome talking to you, and we'll be sure to include links to your website in our show notes, and hopefully we'll see you at some point down on the trail.
Thank you for doing this, and I'll end it with thank you, everybody.
And welcome back. It's time for Review Corner with Gary Kirk. I'm just joking. But we do have some great reviews this week. So what are you going to share with us?
So this past weekend, Memorial Weekend, one of the typical big outdoor weekends for everybody, I was able to try out the Dutchware Chameleon as well as the DD Hammocks 4x4 tarp. Really liked both of the products. Let's talk about the Dutchware hammock first. So for $125, you can get this hammock. I'll include a link so that you can go geek out on all the specs and the different fabric options and things like that. But what I will say about the hammock is the one that Dutch sent us, and for full disclosure, he sent it to us to try out. And it came with the tree straps, some beetle buckles, and it is a netted hammock. So for me, I really liked the hammock. I really like an integrated bug net. I've tried these different bug net options in the past, and I just like the integrated bug net. I've got one now with the Dutch, the Dream hammock and the Walhalla hammocks, and love the net on all three of them. This one was really nice because it also has a ton of different tie out points. So depending on how you like to lay, you can tie it out and pull it out in any direction that you can possibly think of. And, it's going to suit you. It's wide enough to where you can move around in it plenty, but it's not so wide that you have a bunch of fabric flapping around.
The thing that I like about this hammock is that it's modular. I think it's a really good starter hammock. It can grow with you as you explore, and as you hike and as you sleep outdoors more and more, because there are lots of different pieces that you can add on. So it's budget friendly in that way too, because you can start with the basic rig and then you can add extra storage and lots of other different modular pieces, under quilts and all those sorts of things.
Yeah, I have to agree. The modularity of this is the biggest selling point. A lot of people, when they start out, they don't know exactly what they want. And this gives you the option to mix and match and have all these custom options that, if you added it up and bought it all at once, it can get kind of expensive. I know that whenever I hung in it this weekend, I might have already placed an order for some sidecar storage, and I might have added a few other things that might be showing up tomorrow, according to FedEx. I don't know, but we'll see when the delivery man shows up.
They may be returned to sender. I mean, come on.
Well,
where are the things for my hammock?
Well, you got it all.
That's true. My hammock is a bit of a luxury.
Without a doubt. But, is the Dutchware Chameleon inside the outside approved? Without a doubt. I loved this hammock. It was super comfortable. I slept wonderfully in it. I had no problems with any type of bugs. It's super light. I really can't say enough good things about it. And I'm really excited to be able to put all these accessories on it. So maybe in an upcoming episode, you might hear me reviewing some of the peripheral items that I'm going to add onto it.
So tell me more about this tarp, because to me, a tarp is just a big piece of rainproof material.
And you're exactly right. However, one of the things I know you and I have both taken note of is that when we go camping, I've got this Eno Superfly that has done us well. But when we pitch our hammocks, we use the spreader bar so that we can hang from the same tree side by side, which is really nice to be able to have your partner right there with you. But this tarp is just not wide enough. At that end that has a spreader bar, there's always a little area where water could get in. I know that time that we were camping down at Goose Creek, a lot of water got in on us. It was difficult.
It was a tropical depression, but I can't blame the tarp for that. But go on. I hear your point.
Okay, but I mean, in an extreme situation, you need extreme coverage.
That's true.
And this tarp, I will say, the Double D 4x4 tarp is not an ultralight tarp. Okay, and it could be used as a single person tarp by all means. But if you're looking for a lightweight tarp to go out on an excursion, this is not the tarp that I would recommend. However, for us, where we go as a couple, we can divide and conquer our loads. So, one of us could be carrying the tarp while the other one is carrying the hammocks. You can balance those weights out quite easily.
Let's clarify that this thing isn't heavy. It's, if you're an ultralighter, this is not going to be your thing. But otherwise...
Exactly. It's much lighter than the tarp that you would go buy at Wally World. The thing that I like about this thing is it is big. I was able to pitch it and then using some little sticks that I cut down, be able to prop the ends open. And when you put this thing in porch mode, you've got this huge area. It's not going to be any problem putting 2 hammocks underneath this thing. And I had a significant rainstorm roll in on Sunday night that would have been a problem with any other tarp, but this one is long enough and wide enough that I was able to leave it in almost full porch mode and had no problems with rain. It was wonderful. I had plenty of room to move around underneath there when I was changing clothes, doing any, my prep in the mornings or the evenings. Lots and lots of space. So again, another item that would definitely be Inside the Outside approved. Inside the Outside is proudly brought to you by Terrapin Outfitters. Terrapin Outfitters is an innovative company that specializes in developing clothing and gear that enhance people's enjoyment of outdoor activities. Check them out at terrapinoutfitters.com.
And follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Look for the handle Inside the Outside Show.
For links to our social media and other stuff that we talk about in the show, be sure to check out the show notes and our website, InsideTheOutsideShow.com.